What if right now you're already looking at something that shouldn't exist? The universe hides objects that break the laws of physics, signals that no one can explain, and mysteries that scientists still have no answers for. But the most frightening question is, why is almost no one talking about this?
On February 18, the rover Perseverance successfully landed on Mars, a truly historic event for Earth. What data has the rover managed to transmit over the past few days? The most important thing was the video from the rover, published by NASA on February 22. Perseverance is equipped with several cameras, which made it possible to film from different angles. In the video, we can see the rover's parachute, the approach to the surface of the red planet, and the wind and clouds of dust raised by the rover. While the photos from the rover were received almost immediately after landing, it took much longer to transmit the video, since the data had to travel millions of kilometers. For us people on Earth who are used to science fiction movies and computer graphics, it may be hard at first to grasp the full epicness and uniqueness of this video. But this is the first recording in human history of a landing on another planet, and of such high quality at that. Do you realize how far we've stepped into the future? And for the first time in history, you can now hear Mars. Perseverance became the first Mars rover equipped with sound recording equipment. On the SoundCloud website, an audio recording made by Perseverance appeared on NASA's account. And this is already the second recording of sounds from Mars, but while the first one was dominated by the noise of the rover itself, in the new recording all extraneous noises have been filtered out as much as possible. Listen for yourself. So did you hear the gusts of Martian wind? And on Mars, it can reach up to 30 meters per second. NASA also published a panoramic image of Mars taken by Perseverance, which allows you to examine the Martian landscape in detail from all sides. But that's not all. In addition to new data, the video published by NASA also managed to raise a few questions. Attentive viewers noticed the pattern on the red and white parachute of Perseverance, which was captured by one of the cameras. At first glance, the pattern seems chaotic, but someone suspected that there was some kind of encrypted, hidden message in the design. And they were right. The challenge was immediately accepted by internet users, and after just a few hours, the code was cracked, which was confirmed by the chief engineer of Perseverance on his Twitter. In the concentric rings of the pattern, the phrase, "Dare mighty things," was encoded, which is the motto of the Perseverance mission. And this motto is truly prophetic, because the launch of Perseverance became a truly great event that opens incredible opportunities for humanity. NASA received the first reports from the rover, which say that everything is working perfectly as intended. Ingenuity, the revolutionary drone helicopter equipped with multiple cameras, is doing great and continues charging, so it can soon begin exploring the area. And this means that in the near future, with its help, we will receive a lot of amazing photos and videos from the red planet. Who knows what it will be able to capture? Maybe someday we'll get a real Google map of Mars and be able to take a virtual walk on the red planet? Or maybe Ingenuity's cameras will capture something truly interesting, like traces of alien life. We are living in a truly historic time, a time of revolution. Many events are happening now that will definitely make it into history textbooks. But we're used to this usually being caused by something bad like wars or the pandemic that spread worldwide for over a year now. Then just recently, something happened that can truly be called a historic breakthrough and a huge step forward for all of humanity in general, and for the space industry in particular. February 18, 2021 became a truly remarkable day. Something was successfully completed that 1 million people had been working on for half a year. The Perseverance rover, or in other words, Persistence, finally completed its journey to the surface of the red planet. And on this day, at 11:55 p.m. Moscow time, everyone was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. Perseverance can rightfully be called the heart of NASA's Mars 2020 mission. This remarkable rover launched from the coast of Florida on an Atlas V rocket on July 30, 2020. The rover managed to land safely in the Jezero impact crater, located on the western edge of the Ascites Plain, near the eastern edge of the Great Syrtis. Interestingly, the crater itself was a lake back in the era when the system of river valleys was forming on Mars. The name Jezero itself translates as lake and is present in many Slavic languages, such as Serbian or Slavic. The rover received its name, which translates to Nastoychevost in Russian, thanks to a nationwide student competition. The remarkable and proud name was invented by Alex Mather, who was a 7th grader at Lake Braddock Middle School in Burke, Virginia at the time. "Perseverance is a strong word," said Thomas Zurbuchen, the Associate Administrator of NASA's Science Mission Directorate, in March 2020 during the rover naming ceremony. It's about making progress despite all obstacles. And the launch of the rover itself has already become an amazing demonstration of that very perseverance and the ability to overcome obstacles. I hope you remember that getting to Mars isn't that easy, and it's not just about the distance. There is a so-called window of opportunity, a moment when the distance between Earth and Mars is reduced to a minimum. Such windows appear only once every 26 months for missions to Mars, so NASA was determined to launch the rover from Earth on time. This is already a difficult task, which became even more complicated due to the coronavirus pandemic, which forced a revision of equipment assembly and testing protocols, as well as the safety of the team. But you know what? They did it. The rover landed successfully and has already sent back 2 color images from the surface of Mars. The first was a selfie of its wheel. The second showed the surface of Mars, which turned out to be not so red after all, but rather gray. Why is Perseverance so important to us, since it's not the first rover to visit Mars? What makes it so unique, and what is its great mission? The innovative Mars rover was developed by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and without exaggeration, this rover can be called the most advanced and modern machine ever created on Earth. Its equipment is truly unique and will allow it to carry out very ambitious and important tasks for the future exploration of Mars. After a series of tests, the rover will hunt for signs of ancient life on Mars, collect and store rock samples for future return to Earth. But one of the main tasks is preparing for the future landing of astronauts and testing methods of producing oxygen on Mars. It also includes improving landing methods, accurately determining Martian weather, and much more. Perseverance will thoroughly study Martian rocks and stones using various high-tech scientific instruments, including numerous spectrometers, high-resolution cameras, and a ground-penetrating radar. One of the rover's 7 instruments, called SuperCam, will scan rocks with a laser and measure the composition of the resulting vapor. Using a drill at the end of its long robotic arm, Perseverance will collect samples. It will take 40 samples from especially promising areas and seal them in special tubes. Then this material will be delivered to Earth as part of a joint campaign by NASA and the European Space Agency, possibly as early as 2031. A breakthrough innovation was also the inclusion of an unmanned robotic aerial vehicle, which was named Ingenuity, meaning inventiveness. This drone is equipped with cameras and will carry out a reconnaissance mission, flying around Mars and transmitting its precise and high-quality images. Like other NASA rovers, the 6-wheeled Perseverance is largely modeled after its predecessor, the Curiosity rover, which landed in Gale Crater on Mars in August 2012. And it is still operating, but it has some amazing innovations, opening up completely new
Человечество возможностей.
Perseverance is a few inches longer than Curiosity, and at 1,025 kilograms is almost 136 kilograms heavier. The set of scientific instruments on the 2 rovers also differs quite significantly. But the 2 Mars rovers have the same basic design and the same type of nuclear power source, and they use the same strategy to land safely on the red planet. Are you interested in numbers? Statistics? I'm sure that in a normal situation you would say no, but not when it comes to Perseverance's unique stats. The special strategy for delivering rovers to Mars, pioneered by Curiosity, sounds like something out of science fiction. Perseverance entered the Martian atmosphere at a speed of about 19,500 kilometers per hour, and after a few minutes, deployed a 20.5-meter-long parachute while still moving faster than the speed of sound. But the Martian air is only about 1% as dense as Earth's, so the parachute couldn't slow the rover down enough for a safe landing. That's why Mars 2020 used a rocket-powered sky crane, which lowered the Martian vehicle to the surface on cables and then flew away to crash land at a safe distance. To everyone's delight, NASA received a message that Perseverance had landed safely on February 18th at 3:55 Eastern Time. Let me remind you that's 11:55 p.m. Moscow time, about 11 minutes after the landing actually took place. That's exactly how long it takes for signals to travel from the red planet to Earth. This news sparked jubilant celebrations at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California, which is managing the Mars 2020 mission. Undoubtedly, along with the excitement, there was also a fair amount of relief because success today was far from guaranteed. For decades, only about half of the missions to the surface of Mars have ended successfully. And the landing site of Perseverance on the floor of Jezero can be quite dangerous because of its rocks, sand dunes, and boulder fields. NASA specialists accomplished the nearly impossible. The landing ellipse of the rover was only 7/10 by 6/10 of a kilometer, compared to 7 by 12 kilometers for Curiosity. Perseverance hit this target using 2 new entry, descent, and landing technologies that Curiosity didn't have at its disposal back then. One of them, called the range trigger, allowed the rover to deploy its supersonic parachute at the right moment. The other technology allowed the sky crane, a kind of rocket backpack for Perseverance, to assess the Jezero landscape and autonomously steer away from potential hazards during descent. These landing technologies worked exactly as planned, guiding Perseverance to a perfect touchdown on a safe, flat part of Jezero's surface, and the rover seems to have come through all the trials in great shape. Perseverance has already sent home the first image of its new surroundings, and checks of its integrity and onboard systems have revealed no cause for concern. Curiosity was designed to assess the habitability of Mars. The rover found plenty of evidence that Gale Crater could have supported life billions of years ago. Perseverance will take the next step in this direction. According to mission members, Jezero is a great place for this kind of work. In the crater, located about 18 degrees north of the Martian equator, there was once a lake the size of Lake Tahoe, as well as an ancient river delta. In addition, Martian orbiters have seen clay minerals at the bottom of Jezero, which form in the presence of liquid water. Remember at the beginning of the video we asked, what awaits us next? As it turns out, a lot of interesting things. Once on Earth, the samples will be studied by scientists for decades. After all, researchers are still studying the moon rocks brought back by NASA's Apollo astronauts half a century ago. Here's what Bobby Braun, Director of Solar System Exploration at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, said about this at a press conference on February 17 on the eve of the landing. It's ambitious. It's a challenge. This is a scientifically justified goal that we have been striving for over decades, and now it is within our reach. Well, let's hope that's exactly how it will be. Perseverance has a great chance to make history in the exploration of Mars with many fantastic breakthroughs. Humans are the highest stage of evolution, the most intellectually advanced species living on Earth. The pursuit of knowledge is a fundamental need for Homo sapiens. Thanks to insatiable curiosity, humans have made life more comfortable, dominated other species, and confidently set their sights on the vastness of space. And although the car is no longer the ultimate dream and the computer has moved from the library's science fiction section into every home, there are still areas in which we are absolute novices. And one of these areas is the teleportation of objects over a distance. This is one of the favorite topics of science fiction writers, who, as we know, are always ahead of their time and inspire scientists and inventors. Alfred Bester, Tal Klein, and Stephen King have written about teleportation. But while teleportation is described in great detail in science fiction works, in the real world, things are far less optimistic. Research in this field has been going on for a long time, but there are still very few significant results. Can the plots of science fiction novels come to life? Or will teleportation remain only on their pages? Could this convenient yet extremely risky way of travel become a progressive leap for humanity or a curse? Let's try to figure it out. So what is teleportation? The term itself comes from logic. In Latin, it consists of the words to carry and far away. To put it simply, the process involves the instant transportation of an object to any point in the universe. The term was introduced in 1931 by the American writer and researcher Charles Fort. It is worth noting that the concept includes several types of teleportation, including the most popular one in the 21st century, quantum teleportation. Quantum teleportation began to be seriously discussed in 1993 after the publication of an article describing this phenomenon. Naturally, there was no talk of instantaneous transportation of a person from one place to another. Even now, we are incredibly far from that. The experiments were conducted exclusively with elementary particles, and despite the apparent magic, this has nothing to do with real magic.
Чтобы понять суть процесса,
we need to accept as an axiom the fact that all objects are collections of informational algorithms. A person is no exception either. Therefore, teleportation primarily means the transfer of information from one place to another. In the case of photons, it looks something like this. The sender has a particle in a certain quantum state, which he wants to transmit to the recipient using an exact description. At this stage, the emphasis is on accuracy, not speed. But if there is a theoretical basis, does that mean that teleportation might soon become a reality for us? Charles Bennett was the first to mathematically prove that this was possible. However, at that time, no one even thought about applying these calculations in practice. Other unexplained phenomena were also indirectly discovered, for example, black holes, whose existence has not yet been experimentally proven to this day. What happened later was strikingly different from the scenarios in Hollywood movies, where another Arnold Schwarzenegger was boldly teleported to the planet Mars. Experiments are still being conducted to this day, but so far, it has only been possible to transfer not the material object itself, but information about its quantum state. And this is already a major scientific achievement, because theoretically, the information alone is enough to successfully reconstruct the original object in a new location. By the way, the process of teleportation is familiar to us in everyday life, because it can be compared to a fax. The sender doesn't send the document itself, but electronic information. The recipient receives an exact copy of the document, and yet the difference between a fax and teleportation is significant. In the second case, the original object is completely destroyed and is reborn in a completely different location. What is the quantum world, and is it different from the familiar one? Yes, and very much so. A vivid example is particles in superposition. Judge for yourself. In reality, a person cannot be both alive and dead at the same time. Reality forces an object to choose a single state. But quantum reality is not like that. Particles in it, like Schrödinger's cat, can simultaneously exist in both states until someone observes them. In other words, a kind of superposition occurs. This is exactly what Schrödinger's paradox is about. The cat is sitting in a closed box, where theoretically, at any moment, a device could be triggered that releases poisonous gas into the box. And as long as the box is not opened, it's impossible to predict the state of the kitty. The gas trap can be triggered by chance, and the probability of this outcome is exactly 50%. Thus, for the observer, the cat in the box is both alive and dead at the same time. It's quite difficult to grasp this, and that's not surprising. For several decades, the greatest minds in the world have not been able to fully grasp this mind-boggling information. But that's exactly how quantum physics works, and the best minds of humanity will have to keep figuring it out for a long time. How can quantum teleportation work? For it to work properly, it requires entanglement between two elementary particles. This inexplicable connection allows particles to read each other's state even over vast distances. When discussing this fascinating issue, Einstein's famous phrase is often mentioned, "God does not play dice." What do dice have to do with it? They are directly related to the subject of the scientific debate, because using analogies makes it easier to understand the essence of entanglement. Imagine you have two dice that always add up to 6. If you roll one of them and it shows a 2, then the player will know exactly what the value of the second die is, even without seeing it. A similar situation occurs with entangled quantum particles. Does the universe really make things that complicated? What can you do? No one ever promised us an easy life. This phenomenon is difficult to comprehend, but that doesn't mean the mentioned principle can't be used in practice. Experiments in this area began decades ago. The initiator was Professor Anton Zeilinger from the University of Vienna. The experiment started in the Canary Islands. In a laboratory on the island of La Palma, a pair of photons was created. One of them was later sent to neighboring Tenerife, which is 150 kilometers away. The particle literally traveled on a laser beam. Then, a third particle, a candidate for teleportation, joined the photons that were in superposition. After that, photon C interacts with particle A, which is on Palima Island, and it's done. The scientists determined the state of the entangled particle, and the rest is just a matter of technique. B turns into an exact copy of C, which means teleportation has occurred. If you leave out the scientific details, it turns out that the information about the original has ended up in another location, where, with the right skill, you can recreate an identical copy. But how can all this help with the main question, is human teleportation possible? Will we be able to travel without relying on starships and other devices? Theoretically, yes. But in practice, it's not that simple. What is necessary to carry out the process? First of all, teleportation booths located in different places, and also an entangled pair, with each part located separately in them. In the third booth, there should be an object to be transported, or if you prefer, cloned. The computer compares its state with the entangled particles and sends the information to the teleportation point, where a copy of the object is created. Of course, things only go smoothly on paper. Just think about it. If the computer scans the information incorrectly, instead of you, a fruit fly, a centipede, or just an ordinary potato might appear in the teleportation booth somewhere on Venus. And there's simply no chance of returning to your original state because the source material has been destroyed. You might ask, is a computer even capable of making a mistake? Who knows? After all, our bodies contain about 7 octillion atoms, more than there are stars in the observable universe. If you add to that number the neural connections and arrange them in the correct order, it becomes clear that at the current stage of technological development, such a thing is pure fantasy. If in the foreseeable future supercomputers capable of processing enormous amounts of information appear, it is possible that humanity will make another progressive leap forward. Right now, we are actively observing exoplanets with telescopes, painfully wondering whether there is life on these celestial bodies. And with the development of quantum teleportation, the problem will automatically disappear. People will not only be able to study planets in person, but even organize tourist trips to them. Can teleportation bring humanity closer to a Type 1 civilization? Yes, but there is one unpleasant catch. Even if everything works out as expected, will the teleported person retain the traits of a unique individual? By the way, a similar problem arises for scientists who are trying to develop a scheme for uploading the human brain into a supercomputer or onto another electronic medium. Perhaps with the help of teleportation, it will only be possible to transport inanimate objects, not living beings. After all, no one knows yet what exactly makes each person a unique individual. These questions will have to be answered by the psychologists of the future, since the ethical side of teleportation is much harder to resolve than the technical one. And while physicists are pondering how to increase the distance for teleportation, especially if we think about interstellar journeys and the problems of preserving identity, we know one thing: it will definitely happen. We are surrounded by familiar things and phenomena that we don't pay attention to in everyday life. But if they disappear, the changes will immediately become noticeable and could harm the established way of human existence. For example, when looking at the sky in good weather, each of us, no matter where we are, does not think about destruction. But the constant companion of the Earth does not just decorate the sky. It has a significant influence on many processes of our planet's life. What could we lose if the moon suddenly disappears or is replaced by another celestial body? Our satellite is quite large compared to its parent planet, so its constant presence in relative proximity inevitably affects everyday phenomena, and even the health of Earth's inhabitants. First of all, it is a well-known fact that the moon regulates the tides of the world's oceans. The gravitational influence of the satellite also affects the Earth's crust, but it is not as noticeable since the ground structures are much denser. It is noteworthy that the sun also contributes to the movement of water and the crust, but its effect is much smaller since the enormous star is 400 times farther away. The Earth's constant companion is itself illuminated by sunlight and gives us a portion of this life-giving light. That is why, after sunset, we are not left in complete darkness. A soft yellowish moon always appears from behind the clouds. But the moon's influence on Earth doesn't end there. A large object affects the magnetic field of our planet and stabilizes Earth's axis, allowing it to remain constantly at a 23-degree tilt. This provides suitable conditions for life, and day and night are roughly equal in length, making it convenient for human existence. For comparison, the tilt of Uranus's axis, which we talked about in one of our previous episodes, is about 98 degrees, so the polar night there lasts for more than 4 decades. But the most well-known effect brought by the moon is the slowing effect. It slightly slows down the Earth's rotation, which is why continuous hurricanes don't rage on the surface of our planet. That is, if there were no moon, we would face pitch-black nights. People would be deprived of the pleasure of observing majestic solar eclipses and tides, and a day would last no more than 6 hours. If the Earth's surface were exposed, we would have hellishly hot summers and winters filled with deadly cold, and tornadoes like Jupiter's winds would sweep away everything in their path. Moreover, considering the stabilizing influence of the moon on Earth's axis, the very existence of life on the planet would be in question. Now let's think, what if, instead of the moon, Mars shone in our sky? In the near future, humanity led by Elon Musk is planning the colonization of the red planet, but no one is considering such close proximity. So what awaits us in this case? A remarkable flourishing of civilization or a devastating apocalypse? If Mars became our satellite, the consequences would be unpredictable for both objects. Think about it. Even the moon is a body that's too large relative to the Earth, let alone Mars. But let's start with the outward appearance. The red planet is twice the size of our current moon, so in Earth's sky it would look spectacular, like a big brick orange sphere. Right now, the night Earth is lit by a yellowish white light, but Mars would color it in ominous crimson tones, and the illumination would be 4 times as bright. Why is this possible? Because of the larger surface area of the red planet, which reflects sunlight more efficiently. But that's not the only difference. The tides will become much stronger. Currently, the most significant tide on Earth is observed in Canada's Bay of Fundy, where the water rises by 18 meters. So if Mars replaced the moon, this tide would become a 70-meter monster, which would lead to the flooding of coastal areas. The Earth's crust would noticeably increase its movement. The tectonic plates would become more mobile, multiple earthquakes would begin, and volcanoes that have been dormant for ages would awaken. Another disaster awaits the people of Earth: frequent tsunamis, which will literally become a common occurrence. Temperature swings will become more erratic, which will lead to partial melting of glaciers and make tidal waves even higher and more powerful. Not a very appealing picture, is it? But let's look at the situation from the perspective of the red planet. How would life on Mars change if, along with Phobos and Deimos, Earth appeared in its ghostly sky? We assure you that in this case, the object covered in centuries-old rust would also undergo significant transformations. First of all, the proximity of Earth would affect the temperature of Mars's atmosphere. It would rise so much that it would lead to the melting of the polar ice caps. In the long term, this means the following. Over time, the red planet will transform into an Earth-like world and become a very attractive target for terraforming. It won't take much time, according to rough estimates, about 8 years, and the red planet will teem with life. Isn't this what the progressive reformer Elon secretly dreams about? Perhaps the engineer dreams of seeing the crimson disk of Mars rising from behind the Earth.
Туч. Не потребуется снаряжать опасную экспедицию долгие месяцы.
Take a hand, and in just about 15 hours, the ship with people will land on the surface of the newly formed one. That would be quite real.
Сценарий. Ведь расстояние между...
Mars, under such conditions, is more than 385,000 kilometers away. This vibrant, uplifting picture is just what we need. Don't celebrate just yet. Danger lurks on the other side. Imagine that Earth is gradually turning into an extremely inhospitable and frankly difficult place to live, unlike the flourishing Mars. How will the world's governments behave? That's right, inevitably, there will be competition for dominance on Mars and the capture of more of its territory. Many countries will join the space race and start fighting each other, thus finally turning Earth into an uninhabitable hell. Fortunately, these are just fantasies. Mars still orbits at a maximum distance of 401 million kilometers from Earth, sometimes coming as close as 55 million kilometers. And our planet continues to be the perfect place for human civilization to live, while its best representatives cherish the idea of colonizing the red planet. And the wisest thing is not to try to change the established order of things, but to leave everything as it is. Or does anyone here think differently? Head to the comments. Share your opinions and comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This is not the end. More missions are coming, and the Hubble channel will continue to cover all major planetary events as much as possible. So let's get 20,000 likes under this video, and a new, very exciting episode will be released on the channel right away. See you soon.